I think I love the color. It's clean, it's clear, it's, the salmon pink in color.
At the Pro Wine Trade Fair in Mumbai, alcohol producers from across the globe want a piece of a potential market that no other country can offer.
Over the next 5 years, India will add another 100 million that will join the drinking cohort of consumers. So obviously the younger generation presents a significant opportunity for the growth of every alcoholic beverage in India, including wine.
Australians are also here to talk about more than a mutual love of cricket.
This is Shiraz from South Australia, and this one's a Cabernet Sauvignon, so the McLaren Vale region, which is a sub-region inside of South Australia.
South Australia is particularly well represented, with a group of producers from different regions making the trip as part of the South Australian Government's India Wine Expansion Program.
The potential is immense. With enormous population, even though very few drink wine at the moment, we've got enormous ability to get in on the ground floor.
India is a spirits market. In fact, it's the world's largest consumer of whiskey. Beer is also popular, while wine accounts for only 1% of alcohol consumption, but it's on the move.
Wine is the new media symbol of sophistication, success, aspirational living and celebration. Wine increasingly is being depicted in Indian movies in a very favourable light. This is a very positive sign because India and its culture is widely influenced by its movies. What are we going to taste today? We're going to taste 6 wines from South Australia. Hopefully all the wines are already in your glasses.
Sonal Holland is India's only Master of Wine, a qualification that's highly regarded in the industry. She's also a rarity in a country where only 1% of women drink alcohol.
Traditionally, drinking of alcoholic beverages has been reserved for the male generation of India. However, increasingly women are taking to wine in a very big way. Because wine has a softer image, women are not daunted or do not feel culturally conscious consuming wine in the presence of their family members or social relatives.
The high-profile wine consultant has come on board as South Australia's wine ambassador for India.
So we're tasting a really special wine, and this is a classic Barossa Valley Shiraz. Up until recently, awareness of Australian wine in India was limited to being perceived as inexpensive, cheerful, youthful, easily accessible wines. Consumers are now becoming more and more aware of the kind of high quality and diversity that can come from some of the higher quality Australian wines.
South Australian community.
Among the South Australian producers joining her on stage is Guy Adams.
Wine is all about passion and the stories.
Guy has a passion for many things. The mixed farmer and his wife run a substantial wool and grain operation at Langhorne Creek, southeast of Adelaide. Their family also knows a thing or two about the wine industry. After 130 years of growing grapes and making wines, largely for the overseas market.
We've always been focused on export. We really believe that export is where the world's going. You get the good, the bad, the ugly, and you really just got to keep pushing through and working with what is in front of you. So there's always great opportunities out there.
The family has felt all the bumps on the exports roller coaster. It used to do a lot of business in the US, but that market fell apart 3 times. And more recently, they watched 70% of their sales disappear when the Chinese market collapsed over trade disputes and soaring tariffs. But after 2 visits, Guy is optimistic about India.
India has some significant potential. It's going to be a totally different market to China. It'll be a lot more stable market. We'll see this gradual growth. It'll actually get pulled through where we'll be sending wine in, it'll be consumed and they'll be reordering. Where China was very much an up and down growth pattern.
It's very varietal, but it's fruity as well.
To get buyers, they need to make the right kind of wine.
Amazing colour.
Yeah, 22 is really good. Nice bright colour, bright aromatics.
And when it comes to India, it's all about the reds.
This often baffles people because being a tropical climate, people expect more sparkling wines or white wines to be consumed. However, I think because of people perceiving red wine to be a healthier option, it is definitely more favoured among Indian consumers.
It's one of the nicest rosé I have tasted during this whole exhibition.
Rosés, both sweet and dry, are on the rise.
We think that this is a very nice example of Australian Shiraz.
But it's the robust Aussie reds that Sonal Holland says pair well with Indian food.
Indian cuisine is very varied, it's very rich, with a lot of depth of flavors. So I believe wines need to have equal level of personality and character to them to be able to withstand, because unlike other cuisines, Indian cuisine does tend to sometimes compete with the wines at the table.
The wines already on offer at the table include both local and international labels. And filling more than a few retail shelves are a selection of Australian wines.
Australian wine has got the lion's share of imported wine in India, so we've got 40% of the imported category, so 3 times Chile, France and Italy combined.
That wine is coming from just 24 Australian producers. And perhaps not surprisingly, given its export history, the biggest player is well-known Barossa Valley label Jacob's Creek. Motivated by an emerging middle class, the company, which is owned by French wine and spirits giant Pernod Ricard, made the move into India 21 years ago.
We are starting to see significant growth. So with Jacob's Creek in the last year, we've actually grown at 118%, and we don't have many other growing markets for Jacob's Creek, which is why India is really important for us.
Especially because, like China, it's a red wine market. And right now, without China, red wine is in serious oversupply in Australia, with tanks full in many regions ahead of the 2023 vintage and prices falling.
There's no doubt the loss of the Chinese market has left a huge hole. Exports have fallen by $1 billion over the last 2 years. Now, the question many people are asking is, can the country with the second largest population in the world make up for the loss of the country with the largest?
There is no substitution for China, for Jacob's Creek, and more broadly the Australian wine industry in any short time period. You know, ultimately the only market that we can see that has that long-term growth potential is India.
There are many reasons India is not a quick fix. There's a federal tariff of 150% on imported wines. On top of that are significant state taxes. It's not unusual for Australian wine to end up 8 to 10 times more expensive in India than what it is on the domestic market.
So if you go out to a really sort of fancy restaurant, it's not unusual to be charged about $60 for a glass of Australian wine, whereas a cocktail might cost you $20 Australian dollars.
We have a Chardonnay in this range, which is around the $4 mark.
We have the $4.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, price points are a big talking point at Pro Wine.
And what's the price on this one? So that one lands at about, the FOB's about 14-ish. Yeah, so it's still not over the top.
But what has been over the top is set to become more palatable under a free trade agreement, which is expected to be ratified by the end of the year, after delays due to a change of government in Australia. The federal tariff for bottles over $5, which is around $8 Australian, will be significantly reduced over 10 years.
What it does, and for that price point, I think it's a great value. Very approachable, very easy.
That will make premium wines more affordable for importers to buy and consumers to drink, without threatening the domestic Indian market.
For Australia, our future is in premium wines. We are a high-cost producer. Our country is always worth labour costs, water costs and the like. So we need to grow a premium offering, and that's the area that's benefited from the tariff reductions under the free trade agreement.
But not everyone benefits, which is why Jacobs Creek is lobbying for the cut-off to be lowered from $5 to $2.
The tariff reductions won't help Jacobs Creek at all. It's unfortunate. The interim trade deal did lack ambition. 98% of wines exported to India are beneath that $5 mark. So only 2% of current wine exports will benefit from the interim trade deal.
Aside from the obvious costs, there are complex regulatory requirements the two countries are working to simplify, like India's labelling rules.
We'll be given some information that might work for one particular state, but that label won't then work for another state. India is the most challenging market that we export to, but it's also the market with the greatest opportunity that we see.
Accessing those opportunities, though, is far from straightforward.
You just can't send wine in as samples and go, here's the wine, try this. The wines actually have to get registered, the labels have to be registered, you have to go through that whole process. To get into Pro Wine, I think it nearly took us about 9 months to get it effectively ready to be able to be consumed at the show.
And it's not allowed to be consumed everywhere. In some Indian states, alcohol is banned. And even though it looks to be well and truly accepted here, there's only so much promotional work the Australians can do.
Promotion of alcohol is prohibited federally, so you can't go in and promote your wine. So your promotional strategy has to be, very, very strategic. So, it's an extremely difficult market to crack.
India is the greatest teacher of patience, and we see a number of folk come over to India expecting the overnight success, and then walk away pretty disappointed. And then they'll go back and basically say that India stands for, I'll never do India again.
But Austrade Commissioner John Southwell, who joined Australian wine industry delegates at Pro Wine, says India is worth the effort, especially now.
What we've been working through, especially over the last 6 or 7 months, is actually trying to engage with a lot of folk who have written India off, to actually say the landscape has changed with the ECTA agreement, and is it actually worth another look?
This relationship-building trip to India isn't just about trading wine. It's about trading industry expertise and training opportunities.
So when we eventually look to negotiate the next part of the free trade agreement, having Indian industry on side is really important, and being able to have sort of a two-way dialogue, we're helping them, they can help us, is really, really important.
In the meantime, South Australia's producers have returned home to sift through offers from importers. A big decision which can make or break entry into India.
And that's probably the hard part, to really look at the importers and work out what drives them and whether their business model suits your business model. Because at the end of the day, if you've both got different ideas and where you want to end up, it's all going to go sideways pretty quickly.
But he says if the family gets that right, it will be sharing the love with India early next year. And Wine Australia suspects he won't be the only new player heading in that direction.
It definitely is a market that Australian producers are looking to invest in, particularly once the free trade agreement comes into force. And I think we'll see that number grow quite significantly over the next year or two.